Welcome to the session on best practices to implement decryption on your next generation firewall with confidence. We have with us today our guest, Mr. Matt Harmon from Yardi Systems. Matt is a senior network engineer and will be sharing with us his experience deploying decryption with Palo Alto Networks firewalls. We also have with us Vignesh Sathiamoorthy, who's a senior product manager for decryption. And my name is Neha Kumar, and I'm responsible for product marketing for Palo Alto Networks operating system. I'd like to start by walking you through the current trends with TLS. Now, according to the Google Transparency Report, 95% of enterprise traffic today is encrypted. And malicious actors, they have taken notice, and they're also using encryption to hide their malicious activities and stay hidden. Decryption offers you visibility into your traffic and enables you to fully leverage your security capabilities so that you can effectively stop malware. We also know that TLS1.0 and TLS1.1, which have been there for a while now, they can be deprecated at any time. On the other hand, TLS 1.2 has been there for a very long time and has almost been considered as a norm. And today, TLS 1. And I would say modern protocols like TLS 1.3 and HTTP2, they're gaining widespread adoption because they're considered to be fairly secure. And also services like Let's Encrypt are offering free certificates, because of which it's become really easy to obtain certificates. And there's a rapid, or I would say almost a forced move to upgrade sites to secure HTTPS, as vendors such as Google and other major browsers, they mark non-HTTPS sites as not secure. Now, until a few years ago, you could still do without deploying decryption. However, today, it's absolutely critical to deploy decryption. Now, as you can see on the left in the first example, Wildfire, which was our malware analysis service, was able to successfully stop the download of PowerShell exploitation tool from GitHub. Now, one might think that GitHub wouldn't really host malicious content. However, in reality, there's a high chance of malicious files being hosted on GitHub, and users might be knowingly or unknowingly downloading those files from these sites. And it's only with decryption that you can see the uploads and downloads from GitHub and stop these malicious activities. And similarly, we could identify and stop malware such as Opathring and Pony that uses encryption for command and control, as well as remote administration tools, for example, NanoCore and Rimcos, that are hosted on well-known cloud storage applications like your Microsoft OneDrive. Now, all of this was possible only because these sites were deploying decryption. Now, to emphasize the reasons to deploy decryption in your environment, I would like to encourage you all to start thinking about these questions. For example, do you really want to prevent credential phishing? And if you do, you need to deploy decryption so that man-in-the-middle tools, for example, your firewall, can detect and prevent those corporate credentials from leaking the network. And also, I would encourage you to think about questions like, do you want to prevent data loss, for example, your employees' PII data, or prevent your IP information from leaving your network? Do you want to make sure that malware or viruses do not affect your devices? And do you want to identify and stop malicious users as well as negligent users who might be involved in a bad activity? If the answers to above is yes, then you need to deploy decryption and leverage these security capabilities. Now, I'm very excited to talk about all the innovations that have happened in Palo Alto Networks, whether it is policy optimizer or inline machine learning or IoT security. And at this time, I would like to invite Vignesh to talk about all the new innovations that have happened in 10.0 with regards to decryption and walk us through a workflow to deploy decryption projects in your network. Vignesh?
Thanks, Neha. Hi everyone, I'm Vignesh Sathiamoorthy. I'm the product manager for TLS Decryption and PANOS Infra here at Palo Alto Networks. In PANOS 10.0, we have added several critical improvements to TLS decryption. The most notable ones are TLS 1.3 decryption support. We also introduced a new log type called as decryption logs, and we have introduced a new widget in our command center which consolidates and highlights different TLS related activities. For example, you as a customer can figure out how much of your traffic is encrypted, what portions of the encrypted traffic are you decrypting. If there is a failure, why is it failing? Which applications are running legacy versions of TLS, which are running weak ciphers, and there are many, many more use cases that you can solve with these new additions. Bottom line, we want you to deploy decryption, and we know that you have all the tools to deploy decryption easier than ever before. To deploy decryption, you need proper planning. I'll walk you through a workflow which you can follow to begin your deployment journey. Here is a high-level plan. Size your firewalls. Start small with a do not decrypt policy. Develop a PKI rollout plan. Roll out decryption in stages, that is, start writing your decryption policies. Identify and fix issues, and rinse and repeat the whole process until you have covered decryption for all users, all apps across the entire of your network. Sizing your firewall. Every deployment is different. It is essential to understand the nuances of your network. For example, know your traffic mix. Know how much of your traffic is encrypted. How much is non-TLS traffic? What is your desired throughput? What is the average transaction size? Are there any legacy applications running old versions of ciphers? What are the popular ciphers negotiated between a client and server? The reason we need you to know this many details is because it helps you pick the right firewall for your network. In case you are not aware, what are the popular ciphers that are negotiated between a client and server in your network, you could pick some common trends that are happening in the industry. For example, RSA versus ECDSA. RSA is more popular. When it comes to key exchange, ECDHE is more popular. When it comes to RSA key sizes, 2048 bits are the most popular ones used. All these inputs will definitely influence the way in which you will end up picking up your firewall. Get help from the SE team, your account team, and your POC team to pick the right firewall for your network. Start with the do not decrypt policy. What does it offer? It definitely prevents users from visiting harmful sites. What this means is your do not decrypt policy could be written in a way where it can stop sites that are presenting expired or untrusted certs. Evaluating ciphers and TLS versions is possible now with the Panos 10.0 logs. You may think TLS 1.0 is not popular in your network, but you may be surprised to see some legacy apps that are running weaker versions of TLS. Start writing decryption policies that meet your company's compliance. You may choose to not decrypt sensitive categories such as military or banking. Get in touch with your legal and advisory team and figure out what is the right category to decrypt or not to decrypt. And if it is not to decrypt, understand why you are not going to be decrypting. Now is the time to reach to your PKI team. Get a subordinate CA signed by your root CA. Everything about decryption involves certificates. Get the subordinate CA and its key onto your firewall. Distribute the root CAs to your endpoints using tools such as MDMs, Global Protect, Active Directory Certificate Service, or any other tools of your choice. Secure the keys with HSM if you have HSM, or else enable multi-factor authentication on your firewall to make sure that there is no unauthorized access to your firewalls. Rolling out decryption in stages. Start with users, your first customer network. Identify the users that are dispersed across your network, for example, product management, QA, engineering, who can give you valuable feedback and let you know about their experiences and challenges post deploying decryption. Of course, we want you to decrypt all sessions. It may not be practical in many cases. You may have to skip decryption for certain sensitive categories. Use multi-URL categorization and risk-based URL categorization to skip or enable decryption. If you're unsure if your firewall can handle all the desired throughput that you want, maybe you can start skipping decryption for trusted vendors. For example, your sessions to the sites such as Netflix or to Prime Video. Again, use your discretion to decide what to not decrypt as you roll out decryption. After you finish rolling out decryption, maybe in a stage 2 or stage 3, you can consider enabling decryption for all other categories. Here, I'm showing you how you can build a granular control with URL categorization, especially with multi-URL and risk-based. A site can be categorized into multiple categories. For example, high-risk, shopping, and newly registered domains. You can have a custom URL category to have a combination of shopping and newly registered domains, or high risk and shopping. You can definitely enable decryption for all sites that are either categorized as high risk or categorized as newly registered domains. And also, URL categorization is widely used to help with decryption. For example, you do not want to skip decryption on malicious sites. For example, any URLs that are categorized as malware, hacking, phishing, you definitely want to enable decryption for all users in all locations. Identifying and fixing decryption related problems is definitely a part of your journey. For example, a decryption could fail because of various reasons. For example, could be because of certificate pinning or incomplete cert chain, or because a server is presenting an expired cert. Know the issue, fix it, and then roll it out across different sites. Build decryption exclusion list using either custom URL categories or populate an exclusion list globally across your firewalls. Palo Alto Networks pushes these exclusion lists through content updates, and we make sure that you do not have to do it on your part. Tweak your decryption policy and profile in such a way that you can accommodate legacy applications. For example, you may think that a legacy application is running TLS 1.0 and it is going to take a long time for you to enable to upgrade the application to support modern versions of TLS protocol. In that case, create a policy and create a profile to decrypt a weaker version of TLS protocol. In this slide, I'm showing you how you can have a granular control of ciphers and certificates using your decryption profile. You can choose not to support weaker versions of TLS protocol in your network, for example, TLS 1.0 and 1.1. And also, you can also decide not to support weaker and unsafe ciphers such as triple DES or RC4 or DHE. So use your decryption profile and build your decryption policy in such a way that you secure your network really well. Identifying and fixing decryption related problems has become really easy in PANOS 10.0. In the ACC, you can quickly jump to decryption logs and find out the reasons why it failed. We are giving you detailed reasons why a session failed because of decryption. And also, we will tell you different applications and SNIs that are running weaker versions of TLS protocol. You can choose not to support these in your network. Bottom line, have a plan, a high-level plan, a 0 to 30 day where you are rolling out a decryption in a controlled way, identifying users, establishing PKIs, and fixing decryption-related problems. In 30 to 90 days and 90 to 180 days is where you would expand it globally across all your sites. A quick recap. It is really important to decrypt your traffic. We gave you a workflow for you to follow to deploy decryption and have a tangible plan to deploy decryption. Next, we're going to talk about a customer experience with decryption. Over to you, Neha. Thank you.
So thank you, Matt, for joining us today. Before we dive into your journey to deploy decryption on Palo Alto Networks firewalls, can you please introduce yourself to our audience and talk about your role at Yardi?
Sure. Thanks for having me, Neha. My name is Matt Harmon. I'm a senior network engineer for Yardi Systems. In this role, I have responsibilities around managing the corporate as well as our client-facing and cloud services. Yardi Systems is a real estate management software company. We were founded in 1984, and we're headquartered in Santa Barbara, California. Yardi currently employs 6,000 employees, and this ranges from support staff to developers to engineers and a bunch of folks that are all focused around developing, managing, and deploying our software for our clients in our cloud environments around the world.
Okay. And first of all, so why do you even believe it's crucial to decrypt your TLS traffic?
Obviously, there's a significant security advantage to decrypting traffic, but from a network engineer's operational perspective, one of the things that I like to mention is pretty crucial is the visibility that we gain into traffic flows by decrypting them. Without decryption, there's a lot of information that from a troubleshooting or a traffic flow perspective, we may not have visibility into. And one of the game changers for us with deploying SSL decryption was the credential phishing prevention feature that came out with PANOS 8. And due to the unknown nature of threats that are coming at us tomorrow, we need to be confident that we're inspecting all traffic all the time.
So can you walk us through your approach to deploy decryption, and how long did it take for you to successfully roll out decryption?
Sure. Yeah, our corporate rollout took us a few months. With we've got over 40 offices worldwide, and obviously 6,000 employees. And as a result, we have a lot of different departments. And sort of that scenario, it's really impossible to know what needs to be tested beforehand. So we took a little bit of a slow approach. One of the things that we use is we use Panorama for managing all these firewalls centrally, and that was a critical piece to ensure that we have one constant set of policies that's being deployed to all these corporate locations. And what that allowed us to do was to deploy out to a couple offices at a time, and once we identified and resolved any potential issues we were having in those locations, we could then move on and deploy that same set of policies that now contain fixes to the rest of our corporate locations. One of the crucial reasons to why we began our journey into decryption was, of course, the credential phishing prevention feature. We've been decrypting traffic on the corporate side for about 4.5 years now, and we've been doing that on 100% of our corporate firewalls, again, to ensure that we're inspecting all traffic. We've also, in the U.S., been moving into new data centers, and in these data centers, the edge out to the internet are Palo Alto firewalls. And as a result of using the firewalls there, we've been using decryption since day one in these new facilities. In addition to deploying decryption, we also have to take into consideration compliance and regulatory concerns. So by using URL categories and deciding which of those categories to decrypt and which not to, we're able to sort of enforce what our company policy should be in relation to compliance and regulatory needs. And we do this by using PanDB's URL category. In addition to deploying decryption quickly, we also had to figure out how we're going to handle compliance and regulatory concerns, and we do this by using URL categories that come with the PanDB subscription. This is something that has really allowed some flexibility and allowed us to tailor our decryption policies to our security and privacy goals.
Right. And in addition to threat prevention and credential phishing, can you also share instances where decrypting your traffic helped you get a better understanding of what was happening in your network?
Yeah, so a user may come to us complaining about site performance problems, and maybe we need to understand a little bit better about how a particular web application works. By having decryption enabled, we can see into all the different, HTTP requests, posts, GETs, and things like that. But we can also see the full URL details of these requests. And we can get into user agents, refers, all kinds of headers, exported for headers. This is all data that can complement your understanding and your troubleshooting efforts. Without decryption, we really wouldn't have access to this layer 7 data. We'd really kind of just be stuck with, layer 3 and 4 data and maybe some SNI values, but that's about it.
I'm glad to hear that. And did it impact the user experience both before and after deploying decryption?
Our corporate deployment approach took into consideration that some web applications are just going to break, and there's just no possible way to know what all applications your users are using. So we decided to sort of equip ourselves ahead of time with the troubleshooting tools. Panorama logging was the big one to help troubleshoot and resolve these issues kind of on a case-by-case basis. So yeah, we decided let's not start with roll-in decryption on all 40 offices at once. Again, our approach was little by little, and after maybe the first 20% of offices, maybe we would have identified about 90% of the apps that worked, and then we could proceed with the rest of the deployment. I mentioned panorama logging. The capabilities there really helped us a great deal. You get that logging on the firewall, but having that condensed in a single location in panorama really helped us get visibility across the whole organization. And from these traffic logs, we can easily see which sessions are being decrypted, which sessions failed to decrypt, as well as reasons for any decryption failures. And combining that information with URL categories and URL traffic logs, this really allowed us to look into applications, URL categories, and a lot more information relating to sessions that fail. And really that just gives us the next piece of information that we need in the troubleshooting process. For example, there's some web applications that implement certificate pinning. In those scenarios, you can't decrypt those applications. It's something that the application doesn't support, and having the visibility and the logging into those failing sessions was really critical in being able to identify quickly what's failing as well as help resolve the issue.
So thank you, Matt, for sharing all these details. We recently launched PanOS 10.0 with 70 plus capabilities, including inline machine learning, IoT security, as well as enhancements to decryption. Are there specific features in PanOS 10.0 that you're eyeing on, specifically with TLS decryption?
Yeah, so we're certainly eyeing PanOS 10 to decrypt TLS 1.3. Right now on the corporate side, we're still running an older version of PanOS, so we can't do 1.3. And in this scenario, what PanOS does is it downgrades any 1.3 negotiations to 1.2, so we can still implement our policy even though the external site is 1.3. Now on the cloud side of our environment, we are a little bit closer to PanOS 10, but we haven't deployed 10 yet. But yeah, you can bet we're eyeing PanOS 10 for 1.3 once that becomes a requirement for us.
I see. And what would be some of the key takeaways for other customers who are planning to deploy decryption?
Yeah, so 3 points here I think I can make. At Yardi, our security team is very involved in shaping company policy. And for us, it was critical to get their buy-in and support. And in turn, once we had the network engineering and the security team sort of on board with the same idea in terms of policy and execution, that was really easy for us to then go to sort of the VP and the C level and get their buy-in. Without having that support structure, it would have been a much more difficult process to roll out SSL decryption. I would certainly say it's a requirement to have that sort of structure as you go into your deployment. The second thing I think I can say, and this is more of a technical tip, one of the issues that we ran into while we were deploying decryption was the list of root certificates on the firewall. Normally it's not too much, when you're not decrypting, your browser's connecting to a site and it's getting its public certificate from the web server, and the browser itself is capable of validating because it has its own list of trusted root certificates. But when you deploy decryption at the firewall, you're taking that validation process out of the browser and you're putting it into a firewall and for lots of users. So it became apparent for us very quickly on that we need to make sure that we're managing that trusted root certificate list on the firewall. And it's not just roots, it's intermediary certificates that we need to be on top of as well. And the reason for this is there's a lot of sites out there in the world that they aren't publishing a proper certificate chain. So say it's GoDaddy and then they have an intermediary and then the certificate that they actually purchased. When that chain is not provided on the website, the firewall is incapable of rebuilding that chain if it doesn't have that intermediary circuit. Even though it may trust the root, it needs to see the intermediary and trust it. Otherwise, your decryption policy may wind up blocking traffic. And the third thing, take time to understand what your organization's objectives and goals are regarding SSL decryption. Make sure that you have a concrete policy in mind and make sure that you can execute on what those plans are. And you can do this by understanding sort of the feature set that's available to you and the behavior of the firewall when you create a policy to do X, Y, and Z. Do that, but validate that behavior. Do it in the lab, break it, troubleshoot it. Try to understand what the firewall is doing. And once you've done all of that, take a moment to think about the operational impact but the operational structure that you need in order to support users who might be complaining about, a site that's broken or something like that. I think that's the number one reason why folks don't want to deploy decryption, is because it gets in the middle of traffic flow that can potentially cause a lot of problems for applications. But I think with the suite of features that are available in PanOS, we have a lot of flexibility in control on what policy we want to implement. And it really comes down to you as an engineer understanding sort of those switches that you have available to you to tailor what you need to in terms of policy and marry that to your company's objectives for deploying decryption.
So thank you, Matt, for walking us through Yardi's journey to deploy decryption and share some very insightful tips with our viewers. Deploying decryption is no longer a choice today, and I hope that our viewers have learned that it can be a slow yet rewarding process. Thank you.